Voters will be asked an historic question this fall, whether or not to change Portland's form of government. It will be the subject of Measure 26228. The proposal would create a city administrator to oversee the departments and bureaus in the city instead of elected representatives. The mayor would assist in that, but would not have veto power. There would be 12 other city councilors, 3 people elected from 4 districts across the city, and all elections will be held in a ranked choice voting. Joining me now for analysis on the charter proposal is Portland State professor Richard Klukas. Richard, thank you for joining us today.
No, thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've authored several books, including the Encyclopedia on American Political Reform and The Character of Democracy, which looked at reforming elections. What should people consider when thinking about changing elections or a form of government?
Well, I think as far as when changing elections are concerned, reformers want to make sure that election results are, in a sense, proportional as possible. You're out in the electorate and you have a variety of different opinions, positions, party affiliations, and you want to make sure as much as what's out there in the public is recreated within the legislature. John Adams said something to the effect that we want the legislature and Congress to be like a miniature version of the public. And that's what reformers think. They want to have a city council, a state legislature, a Congress to represent the people and what they'd like as best as they possibly can.
In an effort for representation and increasing that, ranked choice voting has gained momentum across the nation. It means people will vote their candidates in order of preference, first, second, third, etc. How have you looked at the rise of ranked choice voting in the United States?
Well, certainly it is growing in popularity across the United States, and actually a variety of different groups here in Oregon as well are starting to look at it. And it's understandable. Scholarly research has found that, ranked choice voting, it tends to be one of the best. In fact, one study has said it's among the very best types of electoral systems you can find in the world, both as far as producing that proportionality that I talked about, but also in providing constituency service as well. There tends to be a notion among some that you have to have one person representing you to have a good constituency service. But actually, studies have found that multi-member districts with ranked choice voting tend to produce good constituency service.
Yeah, so I want to ask you more about that. In Portland, ranked choice voting would be paired with multi-member districts. Critics are quick to point out that that has never been tried in the United States, but does that mean it's detrimental?
Well, I don't think maybe it has been tried. I mean, there are actually some smaller municipalities and others who have used it. But you have to have a multi-member district to have ranked choice voting. It's the only way that proportional representation works. So if you don't want to have proportional representation, then you can't, if you don't have multi-member districts, you're not going to have proportional representation. If you have single-member districts, you're going to have misrepresentation of people no matter how well you draw district boundary lines. Or something like multi-member districts using ranked choice voting, it will produce more proportional representation, bring a broader mix into a governing body, one that is more representative of the people that live within that community. And so multi-member districts really are an inevitable piece of this puzzle.
And you touched on this, but with this combination, that means some candidates may only need 25% of the vote, of first place votes, that is, to win a seat. This nation has often prided itself on one person, one vote. Is this a departure from that?
No, it's not. I mean, what it actually does is it ensures a better representation of what the public wants. Having your first choice votes the first time means, you can have in this type of system, you can have a lot. It actually produces a more fair sort of representation than that argument seems to suggest. That's sort of a disingenuous argument about the relative importance of first choice voting. It's far less important. This actually does a better job in capturing the public's wishes on who it wants to have elected than having a first past the post systems, which really does do a very poor job in capturing what the public wants. Be it in a state like Wisconsin, in which overrepresentation of the Republican Party, or one might even argue here in Oregon, at the congressional level, that the Republicans should have better representation. And all that comes from the fact we use first past the post system that does a very poor job of capturing what the public wants.
With expanding the council to 12 members plus a mayor, that's 13 representatives, are you confident that there could be the quality candidates in a race?
I think people have been worried about the quality of the candidates under our current sort of form of government. What it'll certainly do is it'll provide sort of more people representing a variety of different perspectives. You hear more voices heard, more numbers that are there, the more voices that will be heard. Of course, at some point you worry that you have too many people on a legislature, which the city council is. It can be harder to run. And so there's always some sort of trade-off in the political system, one which is better representation, and the other one is how functional will that city council be. Will 12 be a size that's too big that makes it so it won't run well? I personally doubt it. But that's one of the things we'll find out. As I like to tell people, no election reform and no political reform are panacea. Nothing will solve all the problems in a democratic system of government, but some systems are considered to work better than others.
Now, the format of this proposal has been of a lot of talking around the charter reform. There have been challenges, legal challenges, that is, to the question, as well as attacks by critics saying it's too much to ask in one question. But is there a risk to this by asking all these changes in just one take it or leave it question to voters?
Well, I mean, it seems to me the Reform Commission has been asked to look at and address a wide range of different problems that have been confronting our city government. And they've had a plan they put forward that has a variety of pieces in it to address all of those different sorts of issues. And then to say that that's too much, what would it really mean? That's something that to me seems a little disingenuous about it. That's not much of an argument. It doesn't say this part of the proposal is bad or that part of the proposal is bad. Instead, it just says, well, we have too many things that we're trying to address at once. Well, I think a lot of Portland, Oregon voters feel there's a lot of different problems that exist within our current city's government structure, both in the representation of diversity across the city, as well as the functioning of the government itself. It doesn't seem to be working. The reform proposal appears to try to address all of those different sorts of things. And then to say that, well, that's just too much. I mean, what's the real specific argument there? What are they really arguing? What specifically is wrong with this particular proposal that's being put forward? That's not an argument saying there's something wrong with it. It's an argument that's trying to defeat it for whatever reason the opponents have for it. Without, I don't think they're being very straightforward on what their problems with it are.
The campaign supporting the initiative has kicked off this weekend, raising more than $200,000 so far. In your assessment, what does the campaign need to do to be successful in this reform?
Well, I think it does need to overcome the types of criticisms that's being, the fact that it's being attacked, it's being too much. It has to convey to the public that these are the best practices. I mean, the proposal that's being put forward as far as the new structure with a city administrator and a city council that's devoted entirely to kind of legislative part of it and overseeing the bureaucracy is, according to the National Civic League, one of the types of model city charters the city it should have. For 100 years, the National Civic League has been putting forward proposals on how to put together an ideal city charter, and this fits in within their best practices, what the National City League advocates for. So somehow that that perspective needs to be conveyed by supporters to voters. Similarly, ranked choice voting by electoral reform experts is viewed as one of the best types of system there is. Somehow or another, those people who support it, they want to to win. They're going to have to convey those types of issues to the public at the same period of time to dispel that argument that this is too much that's going on, but instead it's the right amount that's going on.
And a campaign with just a little less than 2 months to do that. Professor Richard Klukas, thank you for joining us today on Eye on Northwest Politics.
Oh, thank you for having me. That was helpful.